So
then it goes to residents, guests.
and aren't there some that are only available to residents, some?
Correct.
So that temporary card would be needed, right? They wouldn't be allowed. The temporary access card.
If we're talking about guest passes, it's very difficult for us to track that. So because there was a cost already affiliated with the event, then it was decided not to double charge it and say, okay, you have to buy a double guest pass also.
Yeah, well, that's why I just want that caveat. It said that they, they could attend the event, and it wouldn't be required that they have a guest and access pass on those special events.
Yeah, if they have a ticketed event.
I had a note that needs some clarification also. I don't know what clarification to make.
Well,
Confused me when I first.
Yeah, Sherry would be the best one to clarify.
I think
there's certain events that you have to be a resident.
or a paid non-annual
Or
user.
a ticketed event.
I'm just saying that when you say a resident, it also includes anybody who pays the annual pass fee.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
but not the temporary access card. It says a temporary access card shall not be required. Those people would not be able to attend a ticketed event. Because they're guests, right? Temporary access card is a guest, am I right?
I believe so. That's the intent of it, and we'll get with Sherry and take care of your comment. I mean, we're talking about changing the wording a little bit.
Sherry, is it your intent that non-resident members be able to form clubs, join clubs, and basically have the same rights and privileges as residents or renters?
I can go ahead and answer that from a legal perspective, and that is, if it is a CDD sponsored club, then it needs to be open to non-resident annual users, just like a resident. If it's not a CDD sponsored club and it's totally a private club that's just using the district's facilities, the CDD isn't going to have any say over who's in that club or not in that club.
Even though they're using our facilities?
It would be similar to us renting the facilities to a private entity if we wanted to do that. If you have a special event here that's a wedding, you're going to have a list of people who are allowed to be there and not allowed to be there. If we hear of clubs who are engaging in activity that we believe is illegal or puts us at risk, then we would then have the opportunity to go ahead and terminate that club's use of our facilities.
I think that's how it's set up right now, and we do not have to approve a club. If we feel that it's not an appropriate club for facilities, and that could be something that we discussed, but that's how it's set up anyway.
Just on the next page, page 10, just at the top of the page, it says each homeowners association. I don't understand each homeowners association.
Again, this is something that we used at a different facility that we imported over here. Some neighborhoods have multiple homeowners association. They have one homeowners association for multifamily product and then another homeowners association for other product. That's why it's there. If we don't have that situation here and you want us to change it to the community association is the only one, then I can do that. Again, I don't know the structure of the HOA here, whether there's any different one for multifamily.
No, there's only one. Same page down towards the bottom of page number 5, the community club use. It says here, community clubs that use Freedom Parking Lot for carpools and overnight trips are encouraged. What is the word encouraged? Why encouraged? That means you can, you don't have to. You do or you don't.
We can change it to required if you want to.
I thought it was required. Page 4, on the community club use of facilities, sub 5. Sherry, can you tell me, is it required?
I apologize, Bob, I didn't hear the question.
Community clubs that use Freedom parking lot for carpools and overnight trips are required to email the director of security or encouraged?
They're required.
Thank you.
We'll make that change.
Sherry, have you seen this write-up?
I have not reviewed myself yet. I would be glad to.
Why don't you get proof a little bit, see if it fits in with our...
Yes, sir.
Question, Sherry, on ID badges. Currently, I don't think there's any differentiation made with a renter or a homeowner as far as having something on their badge. Is it anticipated that on a non-resident user badge that it says non-resident member?
It can be. It's very easy to do if you like to do that.
I guess it's just a
There-
question. because-
Just one thing that when we have, you guys want to talk about it, you guys good. Are you hearing me okay?
Yeah, take it.
If you, it might cause a little bit of issues. We just thought about this in the past when we've had, where there was a possibility of across the street coming over.
Yeah.
We were just gonna make them members just like everybody else. Because some people could look at it as, oh, you're from the outside. So it's just something to think about. We can make the badges whatever we want. Yeah, or, even if you change the lantern, it's up to you what you want to do. It's not harmful.
It was just a question.
Any other comments on this?
Yeah, I've got a couple of comments. 113 talks about dragon boats. I thought dragon boats were not going to be included.
Here comes Craig.
Well, that's where we get into what Mike said about CDD-sponsored clubs. Does that make that a CDD-sponsored club?
Well, right now, the Dragon Boat, I think we heard at the last meeting that it's no longer under lease and that AV owns it. Is that
Correct.
correct? But the Dragon Boat lease was one of the ones that the CDD was projected to take over. And that absolutely would have made it a CDD-sponsored club. But now, at this point, I don't know the answer.
It's considered,
There's a couple things we can do. We can keep it underneath the club structure, which you guys are talking about, or we can put it, where the boats sit on is Lake Polk. That is currently controlled by basically 80 homes. Okay, so those boats, we can put those under the HOA. In a sense, they're paid off. 80 homes are going to pay them off. They're going to be free and clear, so those boats will fall under the HOA if we would like. Or we can put them underneath the club. There's two options. So, like I said, they need to be covered somewhere by insurance if they're sitting on that lake, or
Liability.
wise.
Insurance, who covers that?
What's that?
Who covers the liability and insurance?
Currently, right now, it's under Avatar Properties under the closed section. We have an insurance side.
I'd like to avoid the ambiguity of whether it's a sponsored club or not. Since that
So do I.
brings up other issues that might indicate it about outside coming in and wanting to become part of a Dragon Boat Club.
Put it under HOA, I thought that's where it was going to go.
But if it's an existing club, how can we decide, well, that's not a club we want to have? We could do that with,
Let's just say this, you can keep the club, you just say you can keep the Dragon Boat Club in general. I
Right.
think just the property would just be fall under the HOA, and the liability insurance would fall underneath the HOA.
We're kind of getting ahead of ourselves here because we haven't even bought anything yet. But I think that, a good time to deal with this when we get closer to a closing.
I have just one other comment. It has to do with using the word that. It should be who, and as the person goes through here, they can change those things. They improperly use the word that, and it's you, it's who. Who.
Any other,
Are there any other changes from Poinciana West that they'd like to see? If not, is there a motion by the board to go ahead and approve these policies as amended?
and we can, yes. Motion, please. Oh, I'm sorry, I make the motion to approve.
Skip Stelfike, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
And I would just suggest if any board member going forward, because I don't want to put this on every agenda, if any board member from either board wants to see it discussed again, please contact Gary, let him know, he can put it on the agenda, but otherwise we'll run with these.
Okay. All right, next item is the consideration in the form of the option agreement for the sales administration building.
You had seen a prior version of this agreement at your last meeting. We did finalize negotiations from a staff level perspective on the option agreement that's included in your agenda package. And again, you're just approving today the form of it with the understanding that this is a document that would get signed when and if you have a closing on the property at the end of the day. But it provides for the administration and sales center to be conveyed to the district if the district chooses to exercise an option in the future. And I think it's the earlier of about 8 years from today, or when there's less than 200 lots is when that option period kicks in. And then there's a short period of time where AV potentially can remain in there after the 200 lots. They get below 200 lots, up to 18 months, and then if AV wanted to remain in there after that, then they would have to negotiate a lease with the district and pay market rent. So it's somewhat of a transitional agreement, but it does, most importantly, provide for the transfer of the sales administration building to the district without cost in terms of a purchase price.
What is the status of the 2 leases? I know there was some question.
There's 2 leases that were out there. One was a bank lease. The bank lease has a 180-day termination provision in it, so I was not concerned about that. If you guys get it, and, don't like it, and you want to terminate it, you can. Ideally, no. I mean, I think everybody thinks if it's working, then keep it. If it doesn't, for some reason, don't. The other one was the pharmacy lease that had a penalty for early termination. My understanding from talking to AV's counsel is that they are working on amending that to get rid of that penalty and also include a 180-day termination provision in there. So, and that all has to be done before you close on this. So we did try to button up those issues, and I think we have. We just haven't seen the amendment yet.
So if we were to approve today, we're approving it with the idea that this has been changed.
Yeah, well, we're approving it in form, and you'll then see the amendment later, because we have to put in the date of the amendment into the definition of both the bank lease and the drugstore lease, and we will have confirmed that those are in fact changed, because we're not going to take an assignment of a lease if it has a penalty in it for terminating.
On page 7, in section F, talks about good and commercially reasonable condition except for normal wear and tear. I assume that that includes roofing and air conditioning and heat.
I interpret that to mean every component of what will be transferred to us.
Mike, did we negotiate the closing costs?
Yeah, the closing costs, I believe, are paid by AV. There's some, if we want to do some inspections, I think those are at our cost, and which is entirely inconsistent with what you're doing now, because the monies are being advanced for inspections, but you have to repay them out of bond proceeds. So again, we'd be looking for a motion to approve the form of this. Again, subject to seeing the amendments on the bank lease and the drugstore lease, with the understanding this is a document that would be signed at closing.
So, can I have one question about that? What's the duration of these leases?
I think the bank lease is on an annual renewal,
Okay.
and then I think the drugstore lease was contemplated 2 5-year terms.
Question, Gary, Mike, with the current agreements we have with Clark, are we going to be under those same guidelines where a certain dollar amount is going to require annual leases rather, or annual agreements rather than multi-year?
I don't believe for taking the assignment, and then we'd have to look at the threshold in terms of whether or not the dollar amounts are even enough to raise that issue in terms of competitively procuring tenants. I don't necessarily think you're going to have to go there, but I want to verify that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, before we vote on that, can I get a reading from Poinciana?
Questions, comments, we're okay?
Good.
Okay. we have a motion on the table
Who
to.
seconded it?
Nobody said
Nobody
I
seconded.
said
I'll
there's a
second
motion,
it.
there's a motion on the table.
No, but that, he made the motion.
I said
Nobody
there's a
seconded.
motion on the table. It hasn't been seconded.
Second, the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, next item on the agenda is consideration. Oh, no, supervisor comments.
And we have a food and beverage agreement, and it's really just a discussion. We do have somebody, I think, from Hampton that was going to be here, and I'm sure we've taken long enough for him to get here. So he has a presentation. The other thing that I wanted the board to be aware of is you had asked before about whether we could do a lease versus a management agreement. And talking to bond counsel, it really depends on whether or not the cafe and the restaurant is less than 5% of basically the bond deal. And we've asked the engineer to look at that. And I've passed out a chart that shows the engineer's findings that it's less than 5%. We've asked Fishkind to look and see from a financial aspect, is it less than 5%? We'll provide that information to bond counsel and ask them to give us an opinion. Then a lease is okay. So that's where we're at on the status of that. I defer at this point to Hampton.
Okay.
Thank you for staying.
Good afternoon, yeah, exactly.
Had a good time back there?
Yeah, I'm almost on time for my 1 o'clock, what I originally thought it was, so this is And Craig, I'd like to talk about that 60% of the trash can. It seems a little unfair for Hampton Golf. I don't know. Just kidding. Well, thank you, first of all, for having us here today. The goal of, and I'll be quick, I think we have about 15 slides, but they'll go fast. The goal for today is to talk a little bit about who we are at Hampton Golf and talk about what our experience has been here at Solavita and what our recommended future would be for some of the amenities proposed in the discussions earlier. First of all, Hampton Golf has been around for over 23 years. We currently manage 22 18-hole facilities, and with those 18-hole golf facilities, we also manage aquatics, equestrian, separate restaurants. I mean, I always tease MG, we shouldn't be called Hampton Golf anymore, we should be called Hampton Hospitality, because we manage a plethora of amenities throughout all of our club facilities. We currently manage over 60 million transactions a year in gross revenue. Depending on seasonality, we have between 1,600 and 2,000 team members. We are in 5 states right now and growing. We have a little over 500,000 rounds a year. And I think what's most important for the group here in this room today is the hosting of over 10,000 social events annually. The one thing I'd like you to know, you've had limited exposure to Hampton Golf over the past 5 months as we have gone into, I'd just like you to know a little bit more about who we are. Hampton Golf is about providing gracious hospitality, and that's something that I think you've started to see over the last few months. The first few months as we've gotten here has been about transition. And as we look at a complete amenities package as you move forward, and we talk about your experience from one facility to the next, I think it's important that the continuity and consistency of what we deliver, not only from a food quality, but timing, and more so the interaction you have with our team members is critical. I'm not going to walk you through the 5 B's that our principles are at company, but you can see them up there on the board. A lot of you know that Evergreen is a sister company of ours, and that's also something, when we heard earlier the discussion of this community and how important lifestyle is and what it is today and what it can be in the future. I think that's what makes Evergreen Lifestyle Management and the Hampton Golf relationship so great. There's a definite relationship there. We're consistent in our communications, and if there's ever any issues, we're able to work those out amicably versus separate management companies, which I think you've experienced in the past, and working together to deliver a seamless experience. So when we first got here, talking about prior management as it relates to the 3 restaurant units and the 2 18-hole facilities, It was a bit of a challenge. There was a lot of things that were managed in an aspect that we wouldn't, so we really took the first 90 days in getting the financials in order, making sure that our GL was set up the way so that we could provide historical financial data, which was not given to us when we first arrived on property. I think a lot of you know, during that time we were getting point of sale systems and team members trained and so forth, so the first 90 days was a whirlwind. And by the way, AB said we're going to renovate the grill at the same time. So we were tasked with that and had a good time doing it. And based on the current participation at the grill, I think everybody's happy. We're currently averaging about 250 covers a day at the grill. That opened in November. And since that time, we've been assisting AB Homes in the planning of what the potential view is of the Mosaic / Starlight Ballroom and what the bistro would look like in the future, which is what I'd like to give you a glimpse of. So, really from an operational standpoint, the only thing that's different, and we'll talk about this one first, when you look at bistro, you'll see that we show a full service breakfast in addition to what you currently have, which is a cafe grab, what I call a grab and go. So there's pre-made items that are there. You can run in, grab it, and move on. Pizza and so forth. What we would propose is to open up the hours an additional 2 hours and have a full service breakfast between 6 and 11. And the purpose for that is when we have full service breakfast, not only to create for residents a great sense of community and a social atmosphere early in the morning, we also, from a staffing perspective, we can then shift the servers from the bistro over to the grill midday so that they can then serve the midday lunch crowd. So on top of obviously our #1 goal, which is provide residents with the highest and best use of each one of these amenities, we also have a staffing model behind it that makes sense and works collectively, which we will obviously be sharing with Vesta, your consulting group regarding food and beverage consulting. So if you look at, and then when we switch from 11 o'clock, then the bistro would then convert to its traditional grab and go, but we would expound upon that. I've got a picture of some stuff later. We would expound upon that for more fresh items so that you could almost you could do a put together on a salad bar and or sandwich line integrated within that grab and go. Mosaics, what we found in our short tenure here is that this is a drinking community, which is a good thing, fun. And so the expansion right now, there's a lack of space, and when we look at Mosaics and the current bar setup, we obviously see an expansion in that lounge area and more of a consistent basis in the hours that we would provide to have the opportunity to utilize the lounge, integrate it kind of from an inside-outside type use because there's a lot of street activities and events here, and then take the actual kitchen itself, which is shared by the Starlight Ballroom, and renovate that, because today your current line is not set up for the volume that you're currently experiencing, and quite frankly that relates directly to your cover time and how fast a meal gets to your table, how fast covers get out to any banquet event. So fixing that back kitchen and expanding it to not its physical footprint, but the actual equipment line and the highest and best use of equipment is something that we would also address, so we propose to address. And the grill, I think you've seen the renovation there. We've gotten a ton of positive feedback. We've gotten some other feedback on minor items that we're certainly working on, but we would propose that if we had a full service bistro breakfast in the morning, that the grill would go more towards a limited breakfast service, meaning if we have golfers there ready to go and they want to grab a breakfast sandwich, we certainly have the capabilities of doing that. But if it was a sit-down breakfast, it would be more geared toward the bistro. And then obviously the grill would turn into its normal lunch through dinner service and cocktails at all times also. Again, these are all recommendations, and the recommendations are predicated on twofold. Number one, highest and best use for residents, and then number two, how can we utilize the staffing so that it makes sense for the operation itself. Under the bistro, I think I've pretty much touched upon this, but the one thing, if we are going to have a full service breakfast, this is a little bit different than a standalone breakfast unit. A standalone breakfast unit in its traditional sense is come in, get your breakfast, your check's on the table, you move fast, it's a high turn type scenario. Obviously, in a resident or a community scenario such as this, that's not what we're looking for. And that's why the recommendation of the 75 seats, which would utilize the library space, also coming around to a complete L of the dining room tables. The overhaul at the kitchen would certainly be an expansion because we would be doing breakfast. We have several versions of what we're working with architects to propose, and there's some pretty good ideas that will allow us to conduct full service breakfast and then again convert to cafe grab and go. The grill, nothing to really touch upon there. The only difference is we would have a fast breakfast solution versus a full service breakfast, and currently we're doing well with the grill. Mosaics, the same. The seats on the 85, the only difference is we would, the lounge from the front area, if you walk into Mosaics today and you have your bar to your left and you have the exit to your porch area to the right, what we're currently proposing is enclose that right area, which would expand the whole front from dining right side all the way through the ballroom entry over here on your left-hand side, and convert that into a high functional, high seating area lounge for all to enjoy, even when there's not this upscale casual dining evenings, which we would start based on demand. We pick several nights, let's call it 2 to 3 nights. Once we hit a certain volume, we would then expound upon those nights. That would be our proposed scenario based on the amount of usage for upscale casual dining in the Mosaics dining room. Also, one more thing to point out, Mosaic's room, when it's not utilized from that upscale casual dining on those specific evenings, a lot of smaller parties are utilized over there in terms of this banquet facility. So if it's a smaller group and this room may be too big, and we shift them over there and we're serving in that area. Pretty straightforward. Again, I'm not going to harp on the kitchen line. When you have, there's times when Chef D's putting out 500-600 covers in an afternoon out of that kitchen, and it's just a function of technical use that we would rework that kitchen and make sure we add a little refrigeration to, and make sure that there's no operational issues in the back of the house. And in the front of the house, we would look at some of the ballroom upgrades that have been mentioned in the past by residents. And the POS system is also something we've identified that needs to be upgraded. This is, I don't know if you can read the top, it looks like that dark area in the bar. It's the grill on top. And what this really shows you is breakfast service, the availability, lunch service, the availability, and dinner service in the availability. So the first line is the grill. That should have been written in white now that I see it here. And the bistro. So you have the bistro open an hour or so before the grill opens up. So you have breakfast service at both. You have a casual, fast casual breakfast service at the grill. You have a full service where you can go in and enjoy a breakfast and a cup of coffee with friends and family. And then it shifts over to lunch. At that time, bistro moves to a pre-prepped grab-and-go cafe that you currently experience today. And the grill is full service from lunchtime through dinner service, and the bistro remains open until 8 o'clock. Mosaics is there on the second from the bottom of the green, and that's predicated on the nights that it's open and also lounge hours outside of the dining nights that it's open. So in conclusion, we're certainly interested in the lease options, and we're discussing some opportunities with AV Homes, and we'd like to further educate not only the board on our thoughts, but more so get ourselves educated on the board's thoughts and the residents of the community, and talk through what the hours and usage and how all that would play into, you know, efficient staffing, increased menu rotation, increased frequencies. In the past, we've had some issues with stagnant menus, and we're working through those now, and I think creating some exciting culinary experiences for everybody based on what you're seeing at the grill. And we'd love the opportunity to do that at all the facilities. And then provide, at the end of the day, just provide value to the residents that we serve. We currently serve a lot of communities, and we'd love the opportunity to be here long term.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Any questions?
One thing I've heard from a lot of the clubs, and I know from my own experiences, is that there's no variation, or much variation in what clubs can do if they want to have a function in the ballroom or something where you're providing catering. And now catering costs have gone up even more so since Hampton Golf has come in, and I know they've been having a hard time getting. Clubs are starting to go off property because they can't afford the catering here. And I was wondering whether there's going to be any options. Are you looking at different options to have some more of a price range for catering functions?
Yes, I mean, obviously the market demands what we can sell. And in a lease scenario, it's a scenario of, okay, we have to not only balance what the residents are willing to pay, or the clubs are willing to pay, versus what the margins look like so that it's not a negative. And I heard you talk about lifestyle events earlier. I mean, we work everything off of percentages. I will tell you that I currently manage a CDD on the west side of Jacksonville, amenities for a CDD. And they have a different philosophy. They've come to me and said, hey, listen, we don't mind that food costs are higher, but we want the resident prices to be lower. Obviously, they're directly related. So consequently, we've gotten to a level of such high volume that we've come back to the CDD extremely proud of the fact that we have a profitable quarter, and they came back to me and said, hey, lower the prices. That was the solution for that. So I think what's important in the early on discussions of what we talk about is what are the expectations of the community and what those thresholds and what they're willing to pay and what the market bears out there. Because if somebody can go cater outside in and not be competitive with us today, there's a disconnect. And we would certainly address that. And if there is one today, I'm unaware of it, and I would love to understand it.
Well, I know the clubs have actually gone catering and actually do catering in Freedom Park and other places, and they've worked with a lot of the major area restaurants like the Buelos, and I think they did, I can't remember all the different ones. Crispers or some of the others. And they've been able to get price points closer to about $8 a person, and when you go to the catering, we're getting price points of $20 and up, so that's a huge difference.
Yeah, I think that I realized that there was catering in that other pavilion when we had the grill occupying Mosaics at the time, and I think a lot of that was the influence, but certainly pricing. If we price ourselves out of a community, we can't be successful. So I completely understand it, and I'm absolutely willing to make sure that we're competitive in that arena.
Our bridge luncheon is all the way up to $22 on Wednesday. We have our bridge luncheon, and it used to be $18, and now it's up to $22 already.
And the only other thing that I would remind everybody is that you had a failed company before. So, I mean, I don't want to be disrespectful, and I don't want to be cognizant of what you're saying, but we also will be very transparent on cost of goods and labor costs and stuff as a sure asset potentially in the future. We can navigate through those things together, and I would certainly encourage that.
If we could, I mean, I don't want to cut anybody off if they want to keep asking questions, but, you know, it might be more fair to provide questions to one person, provide to them to let them take a look at, rather than him cold with a whole bunch of questions.
My concern, I guess, to manage the facilities properly, and you're going to have two owners, obviously you're going to have to allocate your resources where you need them, and I guess just have the accurate accounting so that, you know, when somebody's working on CDD, we pay it, and when somebody's working over at the golf course, they pay.
100%, and that's something that all of our accounting team has worked diligently on to get absolutely accurate. There is a very detailed GL that we operate out of, and all associated expenses with every department. That's one thing I didn't discuss about the 3 units. Today, you have things that are prepped in one kitchen and moved over to another one, and they're just not adequate for each independent unit. What we're proposing with the expansion of the kitchen of the bistro is that would be a self-contained unit. We can quantify it, measure it. Same with Mosaics in the ballroom, and same with obviously the grill is self-contained. So to your point, it gives just more clarity, more transparency on where the expenses are allocated.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Will you make your slides available for posting on the website?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
If there are no more
questions?
questions on that, I'd like to, the board's going to be happy to go backwards. But go back to item, we're discussing the assessment structure. I did hear from AV while we were listening to the presentation that rather than have a delay and have further risk of interest rates increasing, that they would prefer the board just proceed with noticing the caps based on the EFG numbers and proceeding on that. So if that's the case, and that's the pleasure of the board to go ahead and do that, we need to talk about February 10th again instead of February 15th, and we will keep the validation hearing where it's at.
Well, I'm all for that.
Way to go.
We're back to February 10th at
February 10th, 9 a.m.
And we're going to cancel February 15th.
We don't need February 15th. We'll start at 9. And Gary and I mean, if there's no need for the individual meetings, we won't have them.
Then we won't need the EFG to reevaluate them.
Well, we still need EFG on board because they've got to be at the validation hearing. Okay, so with that said, our next meeting will be February 10th at 9 a.m. and we will try to do everything we can to meet the current validation date of March 21st.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Iorio.
Yes.
Supervisors, comments?
Pray that
The interest guys.
Supervisors, comments now? I'll start the
call
comments.
our president, see what he's doing.
I'll start the comments, and thanks to Mr. Iorio, what he just stated. It's one of the few meetings that I come out of here where I really feel we moved along the line. Thank you.
We pulled it in, and usual when you and I are around, we do.
Look at how much I hate this.
Exactly. Just like we did with the harbor.
Any other supervisor comments?
I do have a supervisor comment, not related to that. So, are we done with that part? Okay, at our last meeting, the Poinciana West Board had discussed filling our position also, if you recall. And we were going to wait through this meeting to see what took place relative to the merger. So at this time, it doesn't seem like a merger is potentially in the near future. So I would recommend to the Poinciana Board that we solicit the letters of interest. And at our next regular Poinciana West meeting, if that's agreeable to the board, we have analyzed that by then and be prepared to nominate another person to serve on the board for that position. With the same caveat that Mike talked about earlier, that should we get moving again on the merger conditions, that person would put their name on it. Is that agreeable to Poinciana West?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And I think we should put a note on the website, Gary, if we could, very quickly, and with response to the website, so everybody can get forward a copy of any letter of interest. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. That's my only comment, thank you.
Can I, just one issue, it has nothing to do with what we've discussed today. In several discussions over the period of time, we're talking about these 2 or 3 homes that don't pay anything, but they're not in their districts, or they are in their districts.
They are.
Can we get a clarification at some time on that issue?
I can give it to you now, and
Well, forget next
well, I'll put something in writing and follow it up with an email. Essentially, when we did, the Poinciana CDD was established in 2000. In 2006, we did a boundary amendment to include Phase 6 within the boundaries of the district. In order to do a boundary amendment, you have to have the consent of every property owner who's going to be added to the district. There were 3 lots for which the owners either wouldn't consent or we could never get a hold of them. And we were told to go ahead and proceed with the boundary amendment, understanding that those 3 are technically out parcels from the district and are not included within the boundaries of the district and are not subject to any CDD assessments. Currently, those 3 lots, I think, have club membership privileges and pay club membership dues. Once the CDD takes over these facilities, those 3 lots would have to pay an annual user fee to be able to use those facilities.
The $4,000?
The $4,000, if that's in fact the number that the board agrees on when we have our public hearing.
So would they have the option to then reconsider and come back into the district?
They could.
Is
The
that
cost
legally
to do that would have been free in
Right.
2006, and I would estimate it probably will cost around $50,000 if they wanted to do that now. And so the best way to accomplish that is if you were going to do a merger, we can fold that boundary amendment in and it really wouldn't be much of an additional cost other than some serving.
Okay. But no matter what happens, they will be required to, if they want to get back in, that they will have to make up the dollars that they have not paid since 2006.
That's up to the board whether or not you would require that or not.
Or would they put a lien on it?
No, we don't have a right to put a lien on it, but no, I mean, the board is the one that would have to, I mean, any landowner can ask for a boundary amendment, but ultimately, if you guys say, no, we don't want it, I would encourage you, because that's somebody who would pay O&M going forward, that if they ever, wanted to pay the cost, or you could fold it into a merger, it would make sense from a community perspective.
Thank you.
Okay, any other skills?
Yeah, yes. If we can get the numbers right, Tony, if we can get the numbers right, we can make this work. When this first occurred, I wasn't in favor of it. I was on the other side. And as I looked at it, I realized that if we don't buy it, unlike some other CDDs that the builders have gone belly up, I don't think this company is. And they're going to move on. And what you have is what you're going to live with. And somebody else coming in here is going to buy for the cash flow. And they're going to milk it. And you're going to get somebody coming in here saying, you know, we can't charge any more than $1 a month or $1 a year in increase. But we could put a management fee in there of $50,000 or $100,000. And guess what? You're going to pay it. Or you're going to move out. So let's get the numbers right. If we get the numbers right, I'm all for it. If we're going to get screwed, forget it. I'm not interested. I don't think it's going to happen. But let's see.
Okay, any other supervisor comments? No? Okay. Move on to audience comments.
I'm going to be real quick. I'm Ed Gross. I live at 625 Tapatio Lane. And Lita, going back to what you said about the catering, I would like you to look at your operations thing that was just published on page 14. It specifically deals with catering. And it says that you have the right to cater in the outbuildings, but you have no right to cater in the Starlight Ballroom or the Mosaics. And it also refers to Stonegate GRILLE as a caterer. So I would suggest that you probably take a look at that. The second area that I'm very concerned with has to do with the Sola Vida Rec CDD website. What the hell is it, and why don't we have access to it?
I don't know.
No, I think that there was a website that was set up early on in terms of that had some financial information in it.
Well, what happened is, Mike, is that, for example, the budget, for example, was presented today. Okay, we've had access to the budget in the past, and a comment was made that, oh yeah, we posted that to the website. It turns out that it's posted to this solar meter rec CDD, which as a resident, I have no access to whatsoever.
Yeah, we'll correct that.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's it. Thanks, guys. You're doing great.
Thank you, Alex. And any other audience comments? Okay. Last item on our agenda is adjournment. I have a motion to adjourn for the Poinciana CDD.
I so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I have a motion to adjourn, Poinciana West CDD.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.